Hello, today I'm back with a review. This time we'll be doing a discography review. Been a while since I've done one of these, but we'll be doing a discography review for Static X. And this will be a discography re-review because I did do a discography review for this band a couple years ago, and this was before Project Regeneration Volume 2 came out, so this was something that I knew I had to get around to doing eventually. But yeah, love Static X. Been a fan since like around 2011, 2012, somewhere around there if I'm getting my times right. But I've also seen the band live twice. Unfortunately, I never saw them with Wayne, but I've seen the current lineup, and yeah, I'll be seeing them for the third time on Wednesday, and also be meeting them for the third time too on Wednesday. I've done a VIP package for them every time I've seen them live. So yeah, definitely looking forward to meeting them again and seeing them perform again. Of course, performing with Mudvayne, of course. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive into this discography though. It all started with, of course, their debut album, Wisconsin Death Trip. Definitely a legendary debut album produced by Ulrich Wild. I got my copy signed the first time I saw them, and of course the first time I did VIP. Got it signed by Ken, Koichi, and Tony. So yeah, this album is often considered the band's best or one of their best. For me, I definitely would put it up there as their best. And unfortunately, I know some people like to put this album in that group of bands that is, I guess you could say, one album bands. Personally, I disagree with that whole thing. I think they have other really great albums, and honestly, I like all their albums, but again, at the top, I would put Wisconsin Death Trip right up there at number one. But yeah, the mix of new metal and industrial metal, definitely a really cool mix that you get with this album here. And of course, the big songs on here are still great, like Push It and I'm With Stupid, which are both really catchy songs. But I do definitely dig the heavier songs on here, like Bled for Days and Fix, and the title track, Wisconsin Death Trip. But I do also like the more atmospheric or more melodic songs. Songs like Stem and The Trance is the Motion. I really like The Trance is the Motion, which is, to me, one of their more underrated songs. To me, it doesn't get as much love as other songs on the album, but it's actually one of my favorites on the album. Absolutely love that song. Sweat of the Bud is probably another one of my favorite Static X songs too, but really at the end of the day, you can't go wrong with any of the songs on this album. But yeah, this was the album that introduced Wayne Static to the world. Definitely a legendary vocalist, has a unique voice for sure, and of course, rest in peace. He definitely puts on a killer vocal performance in this album. So yeah, Wisconsin Death Trip, definitely a strong debut album. I'd definitely put it up there with other great debut albums from that era of rock and metal. Like albums like Slipknot's debut or Seven Dust's debut or Linkin Park's debut, and of course many others. But let's go ahead and move on to the next album. That album is, of course, Machine from 2001. And this album sees the exit of Koichi and enters Trip. And this would also be their final album with Ken, and he would of course return years later. But yeah, absolutely love Machine. I think this is definitely an album that I think is one of the band's best. Again, you get some of their heaviest work on here. The bigger songs on here are still great, like Black and White and Cold, but you also get some pretty good deep cuts in the album, like Permanence and Structural Defect. That song especially definitely being a banger. And Get to the Gone on here, which is maybe one of their heaviest songs. In a Bag is another one of my favorites off the album. And then when it comes to Otsego and Dead, I think that's maybe my favorite Otsego song from them. Or if it's not my favorite, it's at least one of my favorites. I absolutely love Otsego and Dead. This is another standout in the album too. Definitely a fairly energetic, heavy song that I love. Machine, the title track, is also pretty good. A song that I've grown to appreciate more over the years, because for the longest time, it was a song that I didn't really pay attention to as much as other songs on the album, but it is a song that I've grown to enjoy more and more over the years. But yeah, Machine, really great album. They chose to not do Wisconsin Death Trip Part 2. Instead, they decided to get a bit heavier, and personally, I dig the direction that they went on this album. And also, this is the anniversary edition, and my copy comes with a signed booklet, I'm not sure who did that Wayne signature there, but either way, still, this anniversary edition definitely worth getting if you collect CDs from this band. But let's go ahead and move on to the next album, Shadow Zone from 2003, and this album sees a producer change. This time it's produced by Josh Abraham, who I believe worked with Stain, if I remember correctly, and I believe this producer has also worked with many pop artists too. But of course, Ulrich Wilde is still in the picture, though. He mixed this. He mixed this album, if I remember correctly. But yeah, this album, something you definitely notice with this album is that it's a bit more melodic this time around, but you still have your share of bangers, of course, like Destroy All and Monster and Kill Your Idols. And then there's another thing you notice with this album is also the Jonathan Davis influence, probably through that whole experience Wayne had working with Jonathan Davis with the Queen of the Damned soundtrack. And I'm not sure how other people feel about the Jonathan Davis influence on Wayne in this album, but for me, I personally don't mind the influence. And I mean, Jonathan Davis, definitely a great vocalist, probably one of my favorite vocalists, and of course, Korn is one of my favorite bands, and also one of the first few bands I ever got into. But yeah, Shadow Zone, to me, another pretty good album. I've seen mixed responses, mixed opinions on this album. For some people, I've seen some people even say this is maybe their favorite, while others are personally not too big on the more melodic or more radio-friendly direction of this album. But for me, I actually dig this album. I don't think it's one of their best. I mean, when ranking their albums, I think it's probably more closer to the middle for me, if I had to guess. But even with all that said, I still think this is another pretty good album from the band. The Only is, of course, the big fan favorite off of here, and also the first song I heard from the band too, and also the first music video too. But I think you get some pretty good deep cuts on this album, like Control It and Dead World and Kill Your Idols. And then you also have a bit of a different song from them on here with the song So, which I believe was another single off the album. This song leans more towards radio rock territory, and I like this song. I mean, I'm not sure how other fans feel about the song So, but for me, I actually kind of dig that song. A bit different from what you would usually expect from Static X, but I do like that song though. So yeah, Shadow Zone, to me, another pretty good album in their discography. And also you do get a different lineup here. You have Tripp on guitar, and then this album sees the debut of Nick on drums, and of course you have Tony on bass and Wayne on vocals. But yeah, Shadow Zone, to me, an actually pretty good album. The next, they would come out with this compilation album, Beneath, Between, Beyond, and yeah, to me, pretty cool compilation. My favorites on here being Breathe, Deliver Me, and Down. I do also like their cover of Burning Inside, of course, originally done by Ministry, another band that I enjoy. And this cover features Burton C. Bell of Fear Factory, another band that I enjoy. Yeah, pretty good cover. But yeah, again, cool compilation. If you don't have it, definitely pick it up if you come across it. But the next album is, of course, Start a War, which sees Ulrich Wilde return to the producer chair here. And also sees the return of Koichi on guitar. This album also turns 20 this year. But yeah, this was actually the first Static X album that I heard in full from front to back, I believe, if I remember correctly. But yeah, this album is a bit darker, a bit heavier compared to Shadow Zone. And yeah, this is another album that I think is one of their best. Kind of underrated. To me, it doesn't quite get the same love as other albums in their discography, like, of course, the first two, Machine and Wisconsin Death Trip, but I really dig this album a lot, and definitely an album that I'll always have a soft spot for, since this was also the first CD that I bought from them. But yeah, the fan favorites off of here are still great, like I'm the One and Dirt House and Skinny Man. I absolutely love Dirt House. That's definitely one of my favorite songs, and probably in general from the band, but I think it gets some of the band's best deep cuts in the album, like Pieces, which of course features a solo, and Just in Case, that's another one of my favorite deep cuts from the band. I also love the title track, Start a War. I Want to Fuck and Break It is definitely a banger, and Wayne also puts on a pretty killer performance in this album too, I'd say. And I do also like the closing track, Brain Fog, which is of course instrumental, which shows off the more industrial electronic side of the band. But yeah, Start a War, Really great album. Definitely one of the band's best in my opinion. But next we'll be moving to their album Cannibal. And this album sees a producer change. This time it's produced by Wayne Static and John Travis. Not familiar with John Travis, but Cannibal has to be probably one of their heaviest albums, maybe their heaviest album, I'd say. I mean, yeah, really killer album from front to back. I mean, Destroyer is the big song off of here, but you have other really great songs in here like the title track, and I think you get, this is another album that I think has its share of pretty strong deep cuts like No Submission, and then Cuts You Up, which I think is one of their most underrated songs. That's probably one of my favorite Static X songs. And then you have Team Hate, which closes off the album. That's maybe one of my favorite album closers from the band. But yeah, if you're really a fan of the more heavier side of Static X, then you should definitely be pleased with this album here. But yeah, for me, love that album. And now we're moving to their final album, Until They Would Return, years later. Yeah, the album we are talking about is Cult of Static. Often considered their weakest or one of their weakest albums, and yeah, I'd say one of their weakest. I'd say second weakest. We'll get to their weakest in a little bit, but even with that said, I still think this is a decent album. But something you do notice with this album is that you can definitely tell that the gas is running low a bit here around this time in the band. I feel like this album, it could be a bit samey sometimes, and it doesn't, I guess, feel as enthusiastic as some of their other albums. I mean, maybe they were feeling tired around this time, I don't know, but the album does feel a bit lackluster compared to the albums that came before. But even with all that said, I still think this is still a decent album, though. There are some pretty good songs on here, like Lunatic, which features a solo from Dave Mustaine of Megadeth. If I'm thinking of the right person, Megadeth, definitely another band that I enjoy, also one of my favorite bands. But yeah, Lunatic is definitely one of my favorites on the album. I also like Z28. And Terminal, I think, is a pretty underrated cut off of this album. I also do like Stingray, which is probably maybe the biggest song off of here. I do like that song. I do think the first half is the stronger half. I feel like the second half is not as strong or as memorable, but the second half does have its moments like Isolator. But yeah, Cult of Static, an okay album, but definitely one of their weaker albums, and this would be their final album with Wayne Static. The next in the discography, we see the band return in 2020 with their album Project Regeneration Volume 1. This would be our introduction to Zero on vocals, and my copy comes with a signed booklet. This was something you could pre-order at the time when the album was coming out. But yeah, I really dug this album when it came out, and I still think it's pretty good. Now is it top shelf Static X to me? No. But I still think it is pretty good for what it is. And yeah, of course, the first single was Hollow. I still think it's a solid song. Terminator Oscillator, I know, is one of the fan favorites off here. That's another one of my favorites on the album. That song is definitely a banger and definitely goes hard live, especially. We move towards the lesser known songs on here. I really like Accelerate and Follow. I really like Dead Souls, which features Al from Ministry. That's definitely one of my favorites off of here, easily. But also, I love Ministry, so of course that song was destined to be one of my favorites. And then Obstacle Placebo, another highlight in the album too. Yeah, another pretty good album from Static X. But now we'll be moving to, in my opinion, their worst album, but still an alright album. And that album is Project Regeneration Volume 2. And my copy comes with a signed card here. Something you can, and this was something, of course, you could pre-order at the time when the album was coming out. So yeah, this album, it's all right. I just feel like a lot of the songs in here kind of feel like throwaways / filler, if I'm being honest. I mean, I know these songs are leftovers from sessions of past albums. I know that, but I feel like this album is a major step down from Volume 1. But with that said, I still think, again, it is an all-right album. You do have your moments on here like Stay Alive and Zombie, and I do like Kamikaze and Run For Your Life. Disco Otsego is also pretty good too. But yeah, for me, not as interesting of a listen as the album that came before it. And when it comes to whenever I'm in the mood for Static X, this is always the album that I reach for last. But yeah, again, an alright album, but they've definitely have done better in my opinion. But yeah, also something I do want to show you guys is this. This is I guess a CD album sleeve thing that you can put over your copies of Volume 1, Volume 2, the CDs, of course. But yeah, this is something you can order. This is something you can order from the band's online store. I don't know if it's still in stock or anything like that, but I got this signed in person the second time I saw them live. But yeah, definitely pretty cool to have. But that is my discography re-review of Static X. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below and all that good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and like, subscribe. Have a nice day and take care.